Welcome, Honors Geometry, to our last video of this first unit, this Unit 0, which is just going over what was missed in Algebra 1. So previously we have talked about how to solve quadratics by looking at a graph, by factoring. Today we're going to talk about the last way to solve quadratics, which is known as the quadratic formula. Now, this quadratic formula, something nice about it is you can always use this quadratic formula. Whether you can factor or not, the quadratic formula will always allow you to solve for solutions, to solve for roots, to solve for x. So I like to say is sometimes, especially when you get into Algebra 2 and you're not sure if it can factor, okay, go through and run the quadratic formula, and I will show you here on some of the problems which ones could factor and which ones couldn't based on our answers that we get. So getting right into this, what happens if a quadratic can't be factored to solve? This is when you have to use the quadratic formula. So if it can't be factored to solve, you could check graphing like we talked about earlier, or you're going to go to this quadratic formula. So then, really, what is this quadratic formula? So first off, the quadratic formula, let me write it out for you here. So here is your quadratic formula. First off, it's based on identifying those A, B, and C values from your trinomial. Okay, and then on this, what happens is we just substitute in. Now, you may be looking and saying this is a lot to memorize. I memorized this to a song of Pop Goes the Weasel. So it goes x equals negative b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. That's how I memorized this quadratic formula. And like I said, to use it, it is given to you on some formula sheets, so it's not always necessary to have memorized. Okay, this third question I've already answered here at the beginning. I said it was something that was neat about it. Does the quadratic formula work even if you can factor? And the answer is yes. Okay, this quadratic formula always works to solve. And it's a nice way to solve because sometimes you look and you say, okay, if I don't see that it can factor, I'm not sure, or big numbers, you can always go to this step first. Okay, and then it says, what happens if there's a negative number under the square root? So your square root part is this under b squared minus 4ac. And if you get a negative under there, this is something that you will spend a lot of time in Algebra 2 talking about. But I just wanted you to see this idea is if you have a negative under the square root, you talk about in Algebra 2 these imaginary solutions. Okay, and what those are going to look like here real quickly. You're going to have your x and your y axis. Your quadratic always looks like a U, okay, or an N depending on whether it's positive or negative. Okay, you're going to have maybe something like this. It doesn't cross the x-axis. These are imaginary solution looking pictures. Okay, that is what this imaginary solutions would look like. Okay, and like I said, this is Algebra 2, but I just wanted you to be introduced to that. So when you go to Algebra 2 and they mention it, you kind of remember, oh, I remember, Miss Fulton said that we'd be talking about something like this. Okay, so looking at the steps for the quadratic formula. Okay, the steps for the quadratic formula. Make sure all terms are on one side and set equal to 0. Identify A, B, and C. Substitute in. Simplify. Really, it's set equal to 0. Can you identify A, B, and C? Can you substitute? Can we go through and then break down that substitution? Okay, not that hard. So let's get into this first one. Okay, first off, it is set equal to 0, so now I can identify A, B, and C. A is what's in front of x squared. If there's nothing there, remember it's a 1. B is what's in front of your x, which in this case is -6. C is what's the constant or the number at the end, which is 4. So now, I'm going to put the quadratic formula here, also at the top as a reminder. Okay, there's our quadratic formula. I'm going to start to substitute in. X equals. Now, this negative b right here at the beginning, some people look and say x equals opposite b instead of negative b. That negative b right here is telling you it is the opposite sign. Okay, it's the opposite sign of what you have identified here in A, B, and C. So x equals negative b. Well, the opposite of what we've identified as -6 is a positive thing. Plus or minus square root. Now I'm going to take b squared, a -6 squared. Always when you do this b squared, put number in parentheses. B squared minus 4 times A times C. I'm putting, again, A and C in parentheses all over 2 times A. So 2 times 1. Now it turns into a simplified. X equals 6 plus or minus. Now, this whole step inside the square root, we can put in the calculator in one step. I'm going to ignore that square root. I'm going to type in -6 squared. Wherever I see parentheses, I'm typing it in like that in the calculator. -6 squared minus 4 times 1 times 4. I get 20. So that whole thing under the square root simplifies to the square root of 20 all over 2 times 1, which is 2. Now, we will spend some time here in class talking about this, but you will get into Algebra 2 where you need to break down your square roots. Okay, so when you're breaking down your square roots, you're looking for perfect squares that 20 breaks into factors of. So I know 20 can be broken up into 4 and 5. Why I like that is because 4 is a perfect square. Remember, how you know perfect square if you don't have them memorized is when you take the square root of it, you should get a non-decimal answer. Square root of 4 is 2. Okay, if you get out a decimal answer, you let it as is. So 5 stays as is. So it's 2 square root of 5. Okay, we will spend time here in class talking about that. But if I just go here, 6 plus or minus 2 square root of 5 over 2. Okay, we'll stop there. We're going to talk about this further in class, how to break these down. But our whole thing today is, can we at least get down to this step? We'll talk about the rest in class. Okay, here on B, I'm not set equal to 0. The easiest thing to move is this 4x. So I'm going to subtract the 4x on the other side. This is going to look like x squared minus 4x minus 11 equals 0. I can't put the 4x with anything because there's no like term. So now, A equals what's in front of x squared, which is 1. B equals what's in front of x, which is -4. C equals the constant or the number at the end, which is -11. Now that I have them identified, I'm going back up here to this formula. X equals -b is the opposite of b. So my b started out -4, so it's going to be a +4 plus or minus square root. Everything goes in parentheses. B squared, so -4 squared, minus 4 times 1 times a -11 all over 2 times 1. Okay, well this is going to equal x equals 4 plus or minus square root of, okay, This all can go now in the calculator. Parentheses, -4 squared minus 4 times 1 times -11. I get a 60 all over 2. Okay, if you can get down to this, we will talk about the rest of the way in class. Okay, so there we're done with those two. Let's go to here, some on the back. Okay, well, this first one, okay, it is set equal to 0, and you may be looking and saying, there's a negative leading the way. Don't we have to factor it out? No. Okay, on quadratic formula, it does not matter what is in front of your x squared, whether it's positive or negative. You can go right to using the formula. So in this case, A is a -1, B is a -12, C is a -18. X equals negative B is opposite of B, so opposite of a -12 is a +12, plus or minus square root B squared -12 squared minus 4 AC. So -4 times 1 times -18 all over 2a. 2 times a -1. Now simplify. X equals 12 plus or minus. Back in the calculator. Okay, everything underneath the square root put in one time. Square root -12 squared minus 4 times -1 times -18. I get a 72. 12 plus or minus the square root of 72 all over 2 times -1 is a -2. And like I said, in class, I will focus on explaining how we go down further in this. Okay, I would rather do it in class so the questions that you have right there and then I'm able to answer. Okay, it can be tricky on this one. Going here to the next one. Okay, it's already set equal to 0, so I can go right here to identifying. A equals 2, B equals 7, C equals -9. X equals opposite of B, in this case would be a -7, plus or minus square root B squared. 7 squared minus 4 times A times C. Again, notice everything in parentheses all over 2a. So this equals x equals -7 plus or minus into the calculator. 7 squared minus 4 times 2 times a -9. I get a 121. Square root of 121 all over 4. Now, this one we are going to go further. Pause. Look here. Square root of 121 is 11. This one is a perfect square. Okay, it is the first one that is a perfect square. Oh, I don't need now the square root. Square root of 121 is 11. Once you take the square root, do away with the symbol. My bad. All over 4. Okay, so now, this right here, plus or minus, means you're going to take it once when it's plus, once when it's minus. So it's really going to be x equals a -7 plus 11 over 4. There's where it's plus. X equals also a -7 minus 11 over 4. There's where it is a minus. Okay, so -7 plus 11 is a 4 over 4, which this simplifies then to 1. 4 over 4 is 1. -7 minus 11 is a -18 over 4. Okay, then if I go here, -18 divided by 4 is -4.5. So x equals -4.5. These are the type of problems where you can take the square root and you can get down to it looking this nice, that it could factor. This problem could factor. all the other ones up until now, because we're not looking at perfect squares, are not easily factorable. Okay, you would have to use the quadratic formula. Okay, looking here at the last one. Again, I'm going to move the 12x because I need it to equal 0. So 4x squared minus 12x plus 9 equals 0. Now I can identify A, B, and C. A is 4, B is negative 12, and then C is a 9. X equals negative B at the beginning really means opposite B. So opposite of negative 12 is a positive 12 plus or minus square root. B squared negative 12 squared minus 4 times 9 all over 2a. 2 times 4. So this is going to be a 12 plus or minus, okay, into my calculator. Negative 12 squared minus 4 times 9. I get a 0. You can get a 0. 12 plus or minus the square root is 0 over 2 times 4 is 8. Square root of 0 is 0. So since, again, this would be a perfect square, okay, I can go further. So now I'm going to take it once when it's plus, one when it's minus. X equals 12 plus 0 over 8, and x equals 12 minus 0 over 8. Okay, well, 12 divided by 8 is 1.5. That's for both of them. This, again, I'm going to tell you, is able to be factored. A problem that looks like this, where you get the same solutions, we saw that back when we were looking at it by graphing. If it only has one solution, remember, these are the ones that just touch, or like I say, a lot of times they say they kiss the graph and then they go away. So they touch only at one point, but it's still a quadratic because it looks like a U or an N, okay? Because it could be also upside down. Okay, that is the quadratic formula. I will spend the rest of the time talking about how do we break these ones down with square roots, and what do we do with them. Okay, I want to make sure that you're in class with me on those so I can really answer your questions. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed this video. Ask any questions that you have so far on this lesson, and we will be back together next class to go over this. Have a great